Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the news that the Rwandan government has been selling the homes which seem to have been built with UK taxpayer money for the purpose of housing the refugees that Rishi Sunak is absolutely definitely going to be sending there this year. So really there are some questions here. If Rishi Sunak, who was Chancellor opposed the Rwanda plan, is serious about sending asylum seekers to Rwanda, why doesn't he have a plane ready? Why doesn't he have an airfield ready for the plane that he doesn't have? And why is the accommodation built to house them in Rwanda being sold to locals? So in January 2023, Rishi Sunak said that one of his 5 priorities would be to stop the boats. Nice one, we thought. Oh, so you'll be arranging safe routes for asylum seekers and restoring the staff needed to process claims so that genuine asylum seekers can boost our economy and unsuccessful claimants can be deported and sent back home? As it turned out, no, that was not the plan. The plan was the same plan that Boris Johnson and Priti Patel had. You know, the two people who were in charge as the small boats issue went from being non-existent to some sort of national crisis in the Tory media. And so 15 months later, I'm sure it must come as some surprise to Rishi Sunak that doing the same thing in the same way didn't actually produce a different result. In fact, the result has been exactly the same: to empower Reform UK and cause a major headache for the Conservative leadership, which is now him. I still don't actually understand how Sunak ever thought he was going to use the Rwanda plan to his political advantage. It's obvious he doesn't believe in it, having argued against it as a waste of money from the start as Chancellor, which it is, a huge waste of money. We're now talking in terms of what, about £500 million? And for what? You know, the last time this was discussed, you know, Yvette Cooper would say, for what, 300 refugees? To send 300 refugees there? Well, according to the front page of the Times today, to reinvigorate Rwandan housing, which is nice, I'm all for foreign aid, but we have a housing crisis of our own. I am pretty sure that every single 2019 Conservative voter would say that if you're going to spend £500 million on new houses, that given the choice, they'd probably rather you built them in the UK than Rwanda. Most of them don't even know where Rwanda is, as evidenced by the fact that some supporters of the plan have suggested that if we can't send asylum seekers by air, then maybe we should send them by boat instead, because that works for a landlocked country in the middle of Africa. Now, I appreciate that Sunak has been acting like a cat on a hot tin roof during the entire time he's been pretending to lead his party. He's been attempting to keep as many factions on side as possible while he boosts his financial interests. But given that we are regularly told in reports that he gets very upset at the political direction of travel of his leadership, we might suppose that his ego demands that he doesn't completely destroy the Tories at the next election. At which point you have to ask, how did he think the Rwanda plan was going to help him? If he needed to reduce the level of small boat crossings, there were sensible policies he could have adopted to achieve that. In fact, agreeing the returns policy with Albania last year was one such policy. But the problem is, agreeing it in the year before the election, with nothing else to follow it up with, only meant short-term gain, but a bigger problem in the election year itself. Because the fact that that Albania agreement helped lower the numbers last year makes this year's numbers look even worse. You know, so how did he think this was going to help him? Especially if he was crazy enough to delay the election until after summer. Because let's consider the following factors here. First, Sunak cannot claim to believe in the plan. Not only are there records of objections as Chancellor, but the next few factors show he still doesn't believe in it. Second, the current Home Secretary, James Cleverly, is reported to have called the Rwanda plan batshit. Now, he's never admitted it. We can't prove it for certain, but it's one of those open secrets like, you know, let the bodies pile high. Yvette Cooper is sufficiently happy that everyone knows he did say it, that she references it every time she has anything to say about this in the House of Commons. And Cleverly doesn't seem to complain. Third, if Sunak's Rwanda safety bill actually passed into law and worked as he claimed, He should be sending refugees any week now. In fact, if the bill had have passed into law as he claims he originally planned, he would already be sending them. We were going to be sending them this month. So where's the planes? We don't have planes arranged. Commercial airlines will not touch the contract, even though the contract's reported to be very generous. What they said before last autumn is they didn't want the bad publicity. But the thing is, now that the Supreme Court has labelled the scheme as illegal, even if Sunak gets... Remember what Sunak's bill is supposed to do. It's not there to make it legal. It's there to stop courts saying it's illegal. So it's there to... It exists to circumvent the courts. So from the point of view of commercial airlines, it's like, hang on a minute. Not only would this be really bad publicity, we don't want anything to do with it. But if it's illegal, they operate in other countries. What if one of those other countries takes them to court for breaking international law? No, commercial airlines have said they want nothing to do with this. Nothing at all. Fourth, Sunak, so he doesn't have a commercial airline, but he also can't get the Ministry of Defence because they insist that although they have planes, sure, and the government can order them to do what they like with those planes, they don't have a secure airfield from which to operate. As far as they're concerned, they've got tight enough budgets as well. They're not going to spend the 20 odd million pounds to upgrade an airfield for what is a Home Office project. If the Home Office wants it, they say they can pay for it. And the Home Office are not funding any upgrades, so the government can't use the MOD either. And we know this because when Sunak was asked about this specific point in the liaison committee a couple of weeks ago, he stonewalled. Now, if he'd have had a plan to use the Ministry of Defence, he would have just said, yeah, we can use the Ministry of Defence. He wasn't able to do that, and that is because the Ministry of Defence going, no, we ain't doing it. Fifth, the homes that were supposed to house these asylum seekers, which Suella Braverman famously toured last year, are largely being sold to locals as private houses. We have presumably paid for these houses. It's not always clear, I will point out, because we don't know really where the money's gone because the funding of the scheme is very opaque. So either the Rwandan government are selling homes that we paid for on the understanding they'd be used for refugees, or when Suella Braverman made her visit last year, she was touring what was always a private construction project and falsely claiming that they were intended for asylum seekers. That is possible. The report in the Times does note that the Rwandan media, which is controlled by their government, has said that the plan was always for refugees to be integrated into existing communities. So it's basically like, yeah, we're building these houses, but it was always intended to be mostly for locals and we'll integrate the refugees into our communities, you see. Okay, fine. So if that's the case, then the numbers are interesting because there are apparently only a few dozen homes that are unsold. Basically, you couldn't even fill a standard passenger plane with the number of refugees that the government claims they're going to be sending in the next few months. So whatever the truth about the real intentions for these houses, the Conservative government have been lying to the British people one way or the other. If we've been funding accommodation for the refugees we sent to Rwanda, where is that accommodation? It's not the housing that Braverman was promoting on her visit. I mean, when you take all of these things together, is it really credible to believe that Sunak is committed to his Rwanda plan? So in Sunak's head, where was the Rwanda plan going? Was he actually hoping to call the election for May the 2nd, as I thought for a very long time, and just blame Labour peers for the hold-up of his bill? Is he still hoping to do that, as small boat crossings likely increase this summer? I've said before, I don't think this is a strategy. Labour are confident enough to say that they would scrap the Rwanda plan in government. Their leader has said really explicitly, in a way that he's not really been explicit about very many policies at all. So that means it's a fair bet that Labour do not feel there is any problem with Sunak blaming Labour peers for blocking the bill in the House of Lords. They don't care. They do not see it as an issue that divides the voters they're trying to attract. So Reform UK, they're loving this. They're loving the fact they can claim the Tories don't know how to deal with the situation. Blaming Labour doesn't help win those Tory votes back from Reform UK. Really, the way this has panned out, it's impossible to suppose that Tory strategists think it can appeal to anyone. In fact, we were told at the start of this year, reports suggested that Tory strategists were basically saying to Sunak, look, get the bill through the House of Commons, and then completely forget about it and focus on the economy. So that is the professional strategy that the Tories have tried to adopt this year. Forget about the Rwanda plan, bin it, let it go through the House of Commons, let it get bogged down the House of Lords. Don't talk about it, don't mention it, focus on the economy. That is not happening. It's not happening. The far right of the Tory party are not letting it happen. The Tory media are not letting it happen. You know, so now, like, it doesn't appeal to anyone. To people who don't, thinking about Tory voters, thinking about 2019 Tory voters, I don't think they're going to get very many new ones this year. So they need to try and retain as many of the old ones as they can. To people who don't believe in the Rwanda plan, because polling shows there's a lot of Conservative voters don't believe in it, this latest news just makes the whole thing seem even more of a farce. It's a reminder that this Conservative government is wasteful and incompetent. To those who do believe in the Rwanda plan, what do they see? Well, they see the Rwanda plan going nowhere. Some will think it's because of the aforementioned incompetence. Some will think it's because Sunak and Cleverly don't actually believe in the scheme. Either way, it's not a reason to stick with the Tories, is it? But there we are. Those are my thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe for further content and click the like button. You can also sign up for memberships if you'd like to support the channel further. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.